Yeah, I thought Troy Hill showed a little flash on his return. He's a kid that came in late, missed camp, but has really shown defensively. And part of the being live in the kicking game during something like this is to find out who can step up. Scott made a couple returns, but he did muff one. So really try to find out who can go with Kenyon and Cliff and develop that or some things. And then I thought the black team moved the ball really well. They stalled a few times. I got to talk to those guys about going for it on fourth down. That's usually not my philosophy. But, they didn't convert a couple times. But when you split your team up, there's going to be, some inexperience at certain places. I thought Colt did a decent job catching the ball, especially in traffic, which is a big thing for a tight end. Can you control the middle of the field? Obviously, we know what David Paulson can do. But who's going to, really what's going to happen after David Paulson is a big question for us from an experience standpoint. So overall, I was pleased. The big thing is to get out of it healthy, and I think, we're relatively healthy coming out of it. So we got a lot of work before we get back here on August 8th, and that'll be in the hands of our players now, because today's the last official time that, we can see them and talk to them, but we can't be around when they work out. So
when you do split it up, does it become much more about individual personnel and groups and scheme and things like that?
Sometimes guys get exposed. I know Dion, I don't know who he was matched up in, but, there was a couple plays there, a couple stretches there where he was in the backfield every play, and is he lined up against an inexperienced guy? I'm not sure. But it's a chance for guys, it's an opportunity for you to shine, and I think some guys took advantage of that. So.
Chip, can you talk about the tennis and the atmosphere?
Yeah, that was unbelievable. That's a credit to our fans. I think, obviously, it's not about just our football program, and they just weren't here to do a spring game. I think, number one, to honor the troops and say thank you for what they do. And then, obviously, I think the turnout after the memorial service yesterday with Officer Kilcullen, I think was a real fitting thing to tell them that thank you for what you do. And we learned a very stark lesson the other day about the ultimate sacrifice that someone gave for us. And I think it's a way to say we have feelings for you and we care for you.
So what you mentioned, Colt, how much of today was indicative of the rest of the spring he's had as well?
Colt's a young kid, and I think people realize he's obviously got a ton of talent. But 4 weeks ago he was in high school, and now he's attending class every day. He's going to practice every day. Everything's thrown at him. I mean, he's got a skill set that's certainly unique. He's 6'5", he can run, he's physical, and all those other things. But you're just scratching the surface. You can do a lot of things with him, but you can't throw it all at him right away, because it's a matter of just getting lined up, learning our verbiage. Sometimes when you go from high school to college, it's like learning a new language and getting thrown into a foreign country. And where he was, they may have called it this. Where we are, we call it that. So I thought he showed great growth, in the 15 practices. And the great thing that he'll really realize is on August 8th, when we start again, he's going to be like a veteran. And there'll be some, 20 other freshmen that just show up that are going to be like, hey, what's that? And he'll be the savvy veteran that's getting lined up. He's got an opportunity to really build upon something. I thought he's done a nice job, and it'll be interesting because we really need to find another tight end behind David. So,
Chip, after seeing 15 spring practices, how confident do you feel about the quality of this team going into summer?
I feel confident. This is what this whole process is all about. That it's April 30th. We still have a long ways to go. The thing I'm confident is the kids I'm turning it over to right now. The Darren Thomases and the Michael James and the Kenyon Barners and the LT 2-As and those leaders that have to really take this program from now until the 8th when we get a chance to see them again. But I'm confident in those guys in terms of that. But we got a lot of work ahead of us. But I know those guys are willing to do the work.
So do you think some of these leaders can be as good as some of the leaders you had last year?
We'll see, and that's the big question, and they know that, but there's a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, because we had such a great group last year, and that's the one thing, that we have to replace is that experience and that leadership that the Jordan Holmes and Nate Costas and Brandon Bears and Jeff Males and Casey Matthews, et cetera, showed us, so.
How different do you feel about Darren this year versus last year when he was one of two guys?
It's different. It's a good question. Last year, and I talked to him about it during the game, last year at this time he was, fighting with Nate, and we purposely didn't pick a quarterback coming out of the spring because it really doesn't mean anything because the battle's going to start back up in preseason camp. So, our goal for him last spring was just, can you improve? And there, you saw improvement every day. Now his goal this year, not only is it to improve individually as a football player, but really to become the leader of this team. And he's starting to to fall into that role. Last year, because we had Jeff and Drew and Jordan and Bo and Nate, he really wasn't forced to shoulder that leadership role, but now he is, and he's growing into it. And I thought he played with, again, that's the one thing about him. When you put him in a game, he plays with such poise. He doesn't get rattled. And that's something that I think when you're out in the field, you always look to the quarterback, and that kind of the demeanor he has is the demeanor the rest of our team will take. So.
I know that you said on many occasions this is a forward-looking organization, but kind of now getting through this calendar or scholastic year, taking a look back at last season, what lessons did that team teach this team, do you think?
I think the number one lesson is preparation, in that we win because of our preparation, and it really becomes a rhythmical thing where every week it's the same, but it can't grow stale on you. It has to be the same in your preparation as you go. Your Monday's got to be the same. Your Tuesday's got to be the same. And if you want to play well on Saturday, it depends on what you do during the week. And they've learned that lesson. I watch how our guys practice. We don't have to explain to our guys why we practice. We don't have to explain how things are being done. The key to alignment and the key to being successful is not only knowing what you're doing, but knowing why you're doing it. I think these guys know why. They just have to get better at knowing what they're doing. So,
Coach, Hronis Graciu and Carrington Armstrong are fighting for that center position. Did any one of them really stand out to you today?
Today or over the spring?
I guess over the spring. And
Over the spring, both of those guys improved on a daily basis. It's not unlike the battle we had for quarterback last year. There's not a reason for us to say, Hronis is a starter or Carrington is a starter because we don't have to play a game tomorrow, But I saw improvement from those guys as they went along, and that's a key position for us because if we want to do it, what our game plan isn't to play fast and to do those things, it starts with the center because if he can't play fast, then we're going to have a lot of problems because we can't play the game unless he snaps it. So he's the key, and I watched their growth as they come along, and our tempo and things like that started to increase as they got a better understanding of what we're doing. But, really the quarterback of our offensive line is the center in terms of, and they both show growth, but they still have a lot of work to do. So,
Actually, to piggyback on that question, can you talk about the development of the offensive line? And in your mind, how important is it for this season, given the last 2 years, you've had this tremendous rushing attack with the experienced offensive line?
Yeah, the key to running the ball is the guys up front, and obviously the one thing you can't manufacture is experience, and we lost 3 really good players in Bo and CE and Jordan, but, what we really lost in those guys is 100 starts, and that can't be replaced. So those guys, they got better as it went along. You watched us start to gel a little bit more. We were better today than we were in our last scrimmage, and it's that constant improvement, but that's going to be the key to us being successful, whether it's running the ball or throwing the ball, because we got to protect the quarterback too. So, when our O-line starts gelling, we start playing well. And if you look at our season 2 years ago,